Welcome to Fundamentals of Education Online. In this lecture, or on this video, I am going to give you an overview of what to expect through the course as far as the topics that we'll be covering and the order that we'll go through them. I'll also talk a little bit about Schoology and how you'll interact with Schoology to get the information and submit the work that you're going to do. And then I'll also review the requirements for the course. So to begin with, Fundamentals of Education is a class that I put together that is basically a quick overview of the history of education from a Christian perspective, and also a philosophy of education, an introduction to the idea of philosophy and education. So it's foundational to what we need to know in order to be, I believe, good Christians that are teaching our own children, teaching people in the ministries where we work. And so this is that's why we call it fundamental issues of education, and it's required for all of our students. And I think that's important that each Christian understands these ideas as they minister in their place of service. So we'll begin by looking at the history of education. We'll start with reading chapters from William Barclay's book, Educational Aspects of the Ancient World. There's a chapter on Hebrew education, and then Spartan education, Athenian education, Roman education, and then 2 chapters on Christians and children in the in the ancient world, early Christianity. And so then once we cover that, there'll be a few lectures there's lectures to go along with those chapters, and then there'll be a few lectures on middle history and coming out of what people call the Dark Ages or Middle History. Right after that, the Renaissance, the Reformation, and Enlightenment. We'll have a couple lectures on that, and then we'll have a test over all Middle and Ancient history. The test will be comprised of various questions that are asked after each chapter or each lecture that you watch. So in Schoology, you'll see a reading assignment and then questions to answer. Any reading or lecture questions, I expect that you will be trying to answer those questions, answering the questions as you read or as you watch the lecture. One window will have the questions and another window will have the lecture, or you'll be sitting there with a book reading and then answering the questions. When you come to the test, of course, those should be done without having those questions open or having books or lectures going. But all the questions that are on the test, except for the final test, you will have seen those questions beforehand. So you're welcome to go back to the reading questions and look at them again and again once you've answered them to study for the questions that will be on the test. The book, and then we'll have lectures on American education, early colonial education, the founding of the American school system, post-Civil War education, and then 20th century education and current education. All of those will be in lectures, and there's a set of questions to be answered after each lecture, and then the test over that material will come from those questions in the same way as before. Once we finish the history, and of course in history we'll be talking about philosophy as we go along, ideas that came along and ideas about education historically, then we'll switch our thinking toward philosophy. And the first thing we'll do in philosophy is to read the book by Knight called Philosophy and Education. There's 10 chapters in there. You read the chapter, you answer the questions, and then you read the next chapter and answer the questions. There are, as I say, there's questions for each reading, and then once you finish reading that, you'll take the test over that. That will give us a general introduction to the terms and the ideas of philosophy. The idealist school, realist school, what is metaphysics, epistemology, these big words and all of this stuff, and it should help us understand the terminology as it relates to education and Christian education. Then you will read the book A Christian Philosophy of Education Explained, and this kind of assumes our understanding of these terms, but approaches the questions of Christian education and the need for it from a philosophical standpoint. And there are 6 chapters in that book. We'll read each chapter, answer questions from them, and then have a test where the questions on the test come from the questions for each chapter. Finally, we will get to my own lectures where I've taken these ideas and put them into different categories. We have presuppositions, purposes, processes, places, and policies that are involved in a philosophy of education, and we'll cover those. All of those are in about 4 or 5 lectures. There are not questions for each lecture, but it's kind of like in a neat outline as opposed to the rest of the semester, and you'll just learn everything that you can about all of the stuff in those lectures, outline it, review your outline thoroughly, and then take the final test. All the tests are equal in weight, which brings me to the grading for the course. All the questions they answer from lectures or from reading, and so anything that's related to lectures and reading counts as questions, counts as 37% of the grade. And then there's some reading, a reading that I have you do that counts as 3% of the grade. And so that's like about 40% of the grade is readings and questions. And then the tests are 40% of the grade. There's 5 tests, so those are 8 percentage points of the final grade total each. And then there's 2 writing assignments, and we'll get to those in a minute. And those are each worth 10%, or the average of them is worth 20% of the grade. So that's where we're going in the course. I've set up everything in Schoology in a way so that you'll start and do a few things to get started, and then you'll move through the topics that we have in order. I've set it up so that you won't see the actual assignment or the actual thing to do until you finish the item beforehand. You'll have to view the video before you can see the questions for it. And certain things like that. Sometimes, if you can see something, you're welcome to open it up. Maybe when you open it up, you find out that you're not prepared for it yet. You need to go back and do something else. But if you don't see things, they will open up as you finish. We'll have a description of what's coming up in the folder. The folder description, you'll be able to see text that tells you what's coming up, but you won't see the actual assignments until you finish what's before it. As you finish the first folder on ancient educational history, then the folder for American education history will open up. Once that's finished, then the folder for philosophy and education will open, and then the folder for Christian Philosophy of Education Explained will open, and then finally the folder for Philosophy Education Overview and Outline will open. Once you've done those 5 areas, you'll be finished with the course. Of course, inside those folders are the different assignments that you will do to complete the course. So, for this class, you'll need 3 textbooks. There are links to them in Schoology, and some of them they're actually supplied for you in Schoology. The first is The Educational Ideals of the Ancient World. There's a link to this in Schoology, and you can follow the link to buy it on Amazon, but it's a wide variety of prices. And if you want a hardback copy. Otherwise, there will be a PDF of the book available there, or there is a PDF of the book available in Schoology, and then each chapter, as you read the chapter, that will be available in the folder for that chapter. The PDF will be available in the folder for that chapter. So that book is available as a PDF. Open it up, read it, download it, put it on something else, read it, and so that book is supplied for you in Schoology. Then the book Education and Philosophy. There's a link to this in Schoology, and this one is not supplied. You need to buy this. I suggest buying the Kindle version of it. I think it's $9.99 for the Kindle version. But so if you get the Kindle version, and you can read Kindle books on a computer, on an iPad, on an iPhone, on an Android phone, on a Windows phone. You can read it on all different situations, in all different devices. But it's cheaper if you get the Kindle version, unless you're buying a used book or a library near you has the book. Probably the cheapest way to get that book is to buy the Kindle version of it. And then the book Christian Philosophy of Education Explained. This is available in Schoology. It's supplied for you in Schoology as PDFs. And it's also there as an EPUB book and as a .mobi. So you could download those files and email them or load them into your e-reader. And those are a little bit easier to read than the PDF version of the book if you put it in an ebook format. But if you have questions about how to get those onto your device or how to access them, send me an email or give me a call and we can take care of that. But those are the 3 books that you'll have to read completely for the course. 2 of them are supplied within Schoology. The other one you need to make sure you own so that you can, or have complete access to, so that you can read and answer the questions as you read them. The other thing that you'll be doing for the class is 2 writing assignments. We'll have a biographical sketch and for one assignment, which will just be a page and a half or 2 pages on an American educator. And there'll be thorough instructions in the description of the assignment. So you'll be able to see that, you'll read the instructions and follow those instructions. But generally, what I would like you to do is find a dictionary, a biographical dictionary of American educators. We have one here on campus, and I would suspect they're in a lot of other places, unless you're in a foreign country. But look for a biographical dictionary of American educators and just pick someone out of that book. It's a 3-volume set. Pick someone, start with the short biography of the person that's in that dictionary, and then go to one other source, Wikipedia or something else online that tells you something about them, at least one other source. But if you get all enthralled about the person and you see other things, go ahead, put together a nice but short and concise biography of a biographical sketch of the person. Sketch should include when they were born, when they died, major events in their life, and of course this is educational, so what contributions they made to education. And I want it to be about American education because we don't have a book to read from that section of what we are excuse me, what we are talking about. So send me an email if you have more questions about that, or ask me at another time in another way. Then for the second writing assignment, I want you to compare or contrast 2 philosophical schools. You will see once we read in the book Philosophy and Education, it's going to tell you about philosophy, what philosophy is, what are the major areas of philosophy, and then it's going to talk about different schools, the traditional schools of philosophy and the modern schools of philosophy. There's 5 of them. Idealism, realism, scholasticism, pragmatism, and existentialism. So you'll read through the book, especially in those 2 chapters, I believe it's chapter 3 and chapter 4, you'll read about those schools of philosophy, and you'll pick 2 of them. And then what I want you to do is to make a comparison. You can either do it in like a 2-column chart where you can easily see the ideas that you're comparing, or you can talk about them in paragraph format. But even the column chart is going to be short paragraphs in the columns, not just short statements. But so you'll say a quick description of the school of philosophy. Maybe you'll say who are the popular names, men that are philosophers, those type of philosophers. Then what does each school of philosophy think about metaphysics, about epistemology, about axiology, about ethics, about aesthetics? And then You'll also need to go to, I think it's chapter 6, where chapter 6 describes several educational theories. Each educational theory finds its root in a particular philosophy. So I want you to, in your philosophical school chart, compare and contrast, to conclude by saying idealism, we see idealism in such and such educational theory, or existentialism works its way out into this type of this educational theory. Whatever it is, the answers are all in the book that you're going to read, but you just have to go there and find them and then formulate this information into a nice chart or into a nice presentation comparing and or contrasting the philosophical schools. So it doesn't have to be real long, it just needs to have everything there that I'm asking for. Your writing assignments then to finish this section are a biographical sketch and comparing and contrasting two philosophical schools. So, 3 books, Educational Ideals in the Ancient World, this is supplied for you in Schoology. Education and Philosophy, this you need to have access to be able to read the chapters and answer the questions as you read them, and then there'll be a test over that book. You can either get that from a local library, perhaps, but probably easiest is to buy the Kindle version of it on Amazon and then read it on your wherever you can read it on the computer that you're using to take the course or on a device or whatever. Kindle reading apps are free. If you have a Kindle itself, of course, you can read it there. And then the Christian Philosophy of Education Explained is supplied for you in Schoology, PDF, and a format that you could send to a reader to be easier to read than the PDF format. The outside work is writing assignments, and then I mentioned a couple presentations. You'll do a chapter presentation. When we're in the book, Christian Philosophy of Education Explained, you will pick a chapter and then present the information from that chapter. I'd like you to present it to your phone or your device, record yourself presenting it, and summarize the reading, and then there will be instructions in the description of the assignment about things to address in your presentation. And then you'll upload that to the assignment in Schoology. And one other thing is to present a reading. And this is just in the book Philosophy and Education. You'll just pick a paragraph from any one of the chapters that you've read and just read that paragraph in the way that you would expect to hear it if the author was reading it. Try to put the right feeling and interpretation into it, to an attitude and intent that the author would give as he's reading that paragraph. And then once you've recorded that on your phone or device or whatever, then you'll upload that to the assignment. So we have the writing assignments, the chapter presentation, the readings, and then all the book reading and lecture assignment questions and the test. All that comes together to be the total course. Writing assignments are 20% of the grade. The reading is 3%. The reading questions and the chapter presentation all together is 37% of the grade, and the tests are 40% of the grade. I look forward to seeing how this works, and hopefully if you have any difficulties, we can get those worked through. Hopefully you'll learn something that will help you with your ministry for the Lord going forward.